The Fabulous 413 podcast is funded by the Handle Factory Community Clay Studio in Shelburne Falls, offering summer youth clay and art camps and classes for adults. Learn more at handlefactory.com. The Fabulous 413 podcast is funded by Window World of Western Mass, a local family business with experienced craftsmen offering wood, vinyl, and composite windows. windowworldofwesternma.com.
Welcome to the Fabulous 413. I'm Khalees Smith.
And I'm Monty Belmonte. Later in the show, we'll hear from Ghanaian music from J-Double Ambole about his style and his debut album, which he'll perform in full tonight at the Iron Horse.
First, though, we'll take a walk down the road to Springfield Museums, where a beautiful display is seeking to bring peace and raise awareness for an ongoing issue affecting both Americas, to explore 11 paintings with their creator. I mean, it's always fun to touch the art.
Yeah, touching the art. You, listener, are not allowed to do this.
Don't do
but if you
this.
go to an art museum with the artist, like we did with Josh Simpson upstairs at this Damore Museum of Art at the Springfield Museum,
My head on Joy's shoulder.
that is the sound of the artist hugging and touching the art. What is the name of the artist hugging and touching the art?
Nayana LaFond.
Ayana, this is an exhibit that we've been eager to come see, a beautiful and heavy exhibit. What is the name of the exhibit?
Portraits in Red, the Missing and Murdered Indigenous Peoples Painting Project.
Portraits in Red. Why is that the name?
I'm really bad at naming art, and I just needed something that would give an idea of the general imagery behind it, so it just made sense to call it that.
But also keys into the movement of Indigenous people to have more recognition about, especially women who go missing and are murdered.
And there's an icon that shows up in these paintings that is red, that is an important piece of the iconography behind it. Can you talk about that?
Yeah, they're all in black and white, and the only visible color is red because a lot of Indigenous people believe that red is the only color that spirits can see. And the red hand over the mouth is the symbol for the Missing and Murdered Indigenous Peoples movement. And it symbolizes being silenced, the blood of our people, and also standing up for what is right.
If you had never seen it before, when Reservation Dogs was nominated for Emmys that they were woefully shunned from, they showed up with the red hand on their faces.
This is representing, this is red palm print representing missing and murdered Indigenous women, Two-Spirit. And we just find that there's a very big epidemic in the United States and Canada where our sisters, our relatives, our Two-Spirited relatives are going missing at an alarming rate, and not a lot of people are doing nothing about it.
Do you know how the red hand started or who started it?
I wish I did. I've done a lot of research about it. There's a lot of claims about when it started. There's one that said that it was 2016 by Rosalie Fish, but it definitely existed before then in Canada. Mm-hmm. So it's unclear exactly when it started, but I'm glad that it's become this universal symbol and that so many people are using it.
Including you in this portrait project. Can you walk us through some of the portraits of who you've decided to showcase here at the Springfield Museum?
Is Joy first or last?
There's no order, but there are 11 pieces here, and some of them are really close to my heart. This one over here is Kimberly, and I adore her because she's such, to be honest, a badass. But she's an activist. She is somebody who rides her motorcycle around to raise awareness about missing and murdered Indigenous people. So I wanted to showcase some activists so that it wasn't just trauma, but also a call of action. Mm-hmm. And I think Kimberly is a good example of that. Her image that she sent me to work from was very arresting.
So she sent you an image that you then turned into a portrait. Is that how all of these came about, or did anybody actually sit for a portrait?
There's one, and it's here.
Uh-huh.
So you're lucky, because there's over 110 portraits, and there's only 11 here, but that one is right here.
Is that project ongoing?
It has been for the last 5 years, but I am actually winding it down now. So this is Chuck. I traveled to New York City to photograph him and then paint him. So he's the only one who has sat for me. Everyone else, because this project began during COVID, everyone else sent me photographs, and a lot of the people, unfortunately, are passed away, so I obviously could not sit with them.
Tell us about Chuck.
Chuck is He's in the Red Rum Motorcycle Club. He's an activist for MMIW, and he runs wet shelters in New York City to help people deal with their addictions. A lot of the other people here, however, are victims and survivors, so those two are activists. This is the first piece, Lorena Bear, that I did in the entire series. Her piece, I was on Social Distance Powwow, which is a group on Facebook, on May 5th, 2020, and decided I didn't really feel like the type to take a selfie and share it like everyone else. So I reached out to Lorena, and she said I could paint hers, and this is her piece, and it snowballed after that. I intended it to be one, but it's turned into over 100 now. So she's from Saskatchewan, and she really wanted to share it just to contribute to awareness raising and her own personal experiences with it. And then next to her is Stacy. She's also from Saskatchewan. She's a survivor. And she has a very lengthy statement she wanted us to include, which I appreciate. Each family or person gets to decide how they want their image presented, what they want shared with the public, and what they don't want shared with the public. So it's a very one-on-one experience, which has been a lot, but it's been good.
Do you think we should read Stacy's statement?
Sure. Stacy says, encourage your fellow women to rise above their obstacles, societal discrimination, and pain. We must be idle no more on these issues that affect the livelihood of our home, fires, and our communities.
Nayana, you've lived in Western Mass for the entirety of the time I've been here, and I've gotten to know you through certain other different circumstances, but I've watched this evolve on social media. We met the first portrait that you did. How did it then evolve into like, maybe I need to start doing more of these?
When I shared the first one with the group, I had over 2,000 reactions. So I reached out to a mother-daughter pair, Natahne and Yana, and I said, can I paint you? Thinking I'll just do one more, and that had over 5,000. So then I put one post on the group and said, I'm bored, it's COVID, and I have canvases, I'll paint anybody for free. And I got 25 the first day, so I knew then I had to paint them all. And then they just continued. I ended up taking the post down, but they're still continuing. I got one 2 days ago. So just word of mouth after that, it snowballed. So that's when I realized this has to be a project. I have to set parameters. I have to decide what the point of this is, what my goal is. And quickly I realized I had to do it for free. So it's all been done for free. Each family I realized I had to sit down with, even if it was virtual or over the phone, and figure out what was best for them, because every belief system is different, every family's circumstance is different. And I knew I had to show them and share their stories and just try to not just raise awareness, but also encourage some healing. It's been hard for a lot of people, my family included, to feel heard in these circumstances. So some of the families have come to me and said that they didn't experience any kind of grieving for their loved one and hadn't been able to have a funeral or anything like that. So being able to go to the exhibit and see the portrait helped in that way, which I appreciate that it did something. They're now at the point where I've decided it's time to send them home. So they're all going home either to their own families or wherever their family wants them to be. It's a little difficult to have this kind of portrait in your house. If it's somebody who has died, it can be hard to look at it. So if that's the case, then there's other options for them, but it's completely up to them. I don't consider myself to have possession of them.
How many nations are represented amongst the, not just the 11 that are here, but the 100 that you have?
That's a really good question that I haven't figured out. I would guess at least a dozen. I don't solicit other than the first two, and then I solicited Joy Harjo and I solicited Rosalie Fish, but that's it. So I don't get to pick, but they're pretty evenly spread out between the US and Canada.
Talk about your relationship with the Springfield Museums here in the D'Amour Museum. Like I said, saw this kind of come to life on social media. I saw you at the Peskiamskit Homeland Festival with some of the portraits, but now it's in a museum setting, which is oftentimes not necessarily this museum exclusively, but the idea of museums has somewhat of a colonial mindset and a strange history over the course of years. So talk about your relationship and what it meant to you to exhibit these portraits here in a museum.
This isn't the first museum. I currently have 3 portraits in a museum in Chicago, 40 portraits in a museum in Washington, and I've had several tours for the last 5 years with museums all over the United States. It's, I believe, a good thing. It's a way of reclaiming. A lot of the portraits I've deliberately painted in a traditional portrait style whenever possible, deliberately because we mentally associate that presentation with someone who's important. And we also associate museums and work that are in museums, like portraits in museums, as that person must be important if their portrait is in a museum. So I want that in your brain when you look at them. I want you to look at this person who you would have never heard of previously and think, this person must be important. And they are. They're somebody whose story wasn't told and who needs to be heard. So I think this is a good venue. It says, no, this needs to be looked at, whereas other places it might be more easily ignored.
So you started this project during the pandemic, but I see across these 11 portraits like a clear shift in style. Can you talk a little bit about the change in the way that you paint over the past 5 years?
Painting them has made it change. In fact, if you look at the first one, and then you look at that one, which was much later,
Yeah.
that one took a lot more time, and it is a lot less realistic. That one took 2.5 hours.
And it's
And
very
it's
realistic.
Very realistic. And I usually have to, if I have it printed on a postcard or something, I had a photography professor go, oh, this must be a photography exhibit. No, it's a painting exhibit. It's a result of just the process of repetitive movement, working through how to produce the paintings more quickly, especially when people are constantly messaging you and you feel the pressure to get them all done. And so I got into a workflow where it was start with the eyes, work out on the face, do the rest of the body, I had a whole set rhythm to it, to the point where things just started to get better. I started to realize, oh wait, there's a shadow under the eyelid. There's little details that I didn't necessarily think about before. I was starting to notice more. So that has just naturally evolved in that way. I'm grateful for that. I got a good education in it.
More coming up from Springfield Museums with Nayana LaFond, the painter behind the exhibit Portraits in Red, Missing and Murdered Indigenous People, including the impact of this collection and how it will come to a close.
We'll also sit with Ghanaian musical living legend Jedu Blay Ambole before he'll take the stage at the Iron Horse tonight.
You're listening to the Fabulous 413 on 88.5 NEPM. We're at the Portraits in Red exhibit at the D'Amour Museum at the Springfield Museums with artists from Western Mass, Nayana LaFond, and looking at the portraits that you've created that are telling these important stories that often go unheard and bringing a light to these stories of missing and Indigenous women. When you're painting a portrait, do you feel a different level of connection and knowledge with the person that you're painting and their story than you had previously?
Before I start painting, I will have had a conversation with their family, typically, or if they're still alive, with them. So I'll already know a good amount about them and what got to that point. And so when I enter the position of painting them, I'll usually sit down, have a moment to myself, smudge myself and the canvas, think about what they went through to get them to this point. And then it's a lot of my own personal therapy. So that will relate to things I've experienced. And through that process, I sort of unburden myself while thinking about them. And it becomes a therapeutic release, mostly, for me.
Do you want to introduce us to any more of your portraits?
Sure. There's actually, these 3 are really good ones. So Crystal Perry's from Massachusetts. And when the museum contacted me for this exhibit and they wanted to know if there was any pieces that should be included, I said this one. Her family hasn't come to see the piece yet, but we are arranging for them to have a private viewing. And I really wanted this one shown as much in Massachusetts as possible because her case is a really good example of victim blaming and lack of follow through with police and other officials. There really hasn't been enough done. It was determined to be a double murder, and they said that it was related to something related to drugs, but that is just another form of victim blaming in this crisis. If anybody even has the rumor of anything in their life that could be attributed to why they were murdered, it will be placed upon them, and then that will be used as an excuse to not further investigate. When I looked into statistics in Massachusetts, I found that there's been no inquiries done on missing and murdered Indigenous people in Massachusetts. I did find a letter that was written by someone else inquiring that was posted publicly, so I was not the first to ask, but as far as I know to this day, nothing has been done. We're very much treated as if we're not here.
I was going to ask if you think that's correlated to the fact that many people think that Indigenous people here are somehow extinct, but clearly that's the answer.
Yeah, that is the answer. I've heard of stories from friends whose children go to school systems in the Valley, whose children came home and said, "Oh, my teacher told me that I couldn't possibly be Native." So I know that we do live in a bubble here where we tend to think of ourselves as being more open-minded, but unfortunately I don't think we are.
I'm imagining that, especially because these portraits that you've done, Nayana, are in museums now all over the place, that this issue is being raised in more locations. Are you hearing any feedback about any movement in the movement about missing and Indigenous women because of the art that you've created to honor their stories?
There has been some things that have come directly out of my art, but I'm more impressed by the overall movement's progression, not just mine, but other artists as well, because we're all speaking the same visual language and trying to raise awareness together. And there's been quite a bit of changes on the national level, a lot of which I think are a little bit lip service, but at least people are talking about it and it's in the media now. Through my own work, there was one woman who was found alive, which I'm grateful for.
Wow.
Her painting was shared all over the news in the area she lived in, and people came forward to volunteer to help find her, and they did end up finding her. So I'm really grateful for that. And then...
Wait a minute, I gotta stop that. You made a painting about this missing woman.
Yes.
The painting made it news. They
All over
found
the
the woman.
news.
You literally saved someone's life with a painting.
I would not use those words.
Okay, how would you frame it?
I helped inspire somebody else to find her. I think is more accurate.
But that goes to show you the power of art when we often devalue the importance of art in society. This is a real-time, almost inarguable way to say, no, there is a real value here, even if it's not the esoteric value that I also love.
You can have both.
Yeah, you can have both.
You have
but if you
to
need
have
some
both.
real concrete example, it doesn't get much better than that.
In the state of Oregon, it was also mandatory viewing for CPS workers. So I had an exhibit of 41 paintings on tour in Oregon, and all CPS, which is the same as DCF, workers in Oregon were mandated to attend it, and then they held a meeting where they discussed how the exhibit affected their impressions of the communities they served. They were also included in papers presented to the Canadian government on femicide, to the Mexican government on femicide. They were included in the International Femicide Conference. They're in several movies. It's a long list.
Wow.
So I'm grateful that they've gotten the reach that they have. I'm hoping that they continue to only do good.
Can you talk about, there's no delicate way to put this, when someone contacts you about the collection to put it on display, how do they balance the living and the dead? Or how do you look at balancing the living and the dead?
If I have a say in it, which I don't always have a say in what pieces are displayed, I try to have an equal balance, though to be honest, there are much more paintings that I've done of people who are missing or were murdered. So I just try to include at least a couple of survivors and activists throughout it so that it's not just trauma, so people feel like there is hope, there is change, there are people doing things.
You mentioned that you're kind of drawing this project to a close. Talk about finishing this run.
The reasons I think are important to share, and then the process has already begun and it's going to take me a while. The reasons I came to the conclusion that it's been really important to me to do no harm with this. It's been really important to respect the families and the people who are painted and make sure that their images are never used inappropriately. I don't merchandise. I don't make posters. There was prints I was selling to help me cover the cost of things, and that was only with permission. Unfortunately, some of them were taken off the internet and used on t-shirts and posters and even jewelry. I have had to send cease and desist letters. Public shaming works very good to get them to stop. Just share the screenshot everywhere and they'll back off. But I realized that eventually I wasn't going to be able to control it anymore. And I thought about what it would be like to be a mom walking down the street and seeing a very well-meaning person wearing your child's portrait. That's just re-traumatizing over and over again. And then I thought about my real strong conviction that I don't want to profit, and clout is a form of profit. And it really started to get to a level that made me uncomfortable. When PBS and NPR are calling, you start to sweat a little bit, and they want to talk about you and not the topic. And that's when I started to say no and refocus and say, how do I make sure that that doesn't happen as best as I can? Because it has already gone beyond my reach a little bit. And I realized it was time to send them home, and that the best thing I could do was to send them to their homes. So 5 of them have already gone home, and the rest of them I'm slowly talking to the families. I'm continuing with not charging them, so it's just going to be slowly over time as I have the money to do it. But it felt like the right thing, and as soon as I made that decision, I felt better about everything. A lot of them have to go to Canada, and with current things, that's going to be a little bit hard as well. So it may take me a couple years to get them all home, but thankfully everyone has been really understanding and supportive. All the families, I'm still in contact. So they understand that this is just how it's going to go.
Well, I think we're really lucky that this is here in our backyard, that you live here amongst us, and that we can learn about these important topics and see your beautiful artwork up through the first week of September here in Springfield.
I'm grateful. When I was approached about this exhibit and I realized it would line up with ending, I thought it was appropriate to have one of the last exhibits be at home.
You said you asked to commission a piece. That's the first piece that we walked by. Maybe we should end where we began. You want to explain to us about that piece?
And then I get to talk about how much I love Joy Horjou's
Oh, me
work.
too. Oh, my goodness.
Her work is so beautiful.
So it starts in middle school for me when I read Woman Hanging from the 13th Floor Window to my poetry class, which is an amazing poem by her. So when I was doing this project, somebody suggested I reach out to her, and I immediately thought, oh, no. She's not going to respond to me. She did. She responded quickly, gave me permission, was very kind, sent a personal email afterwards, which I have since printed and framed and put on my wall. It was just great to work with her, and I really wanted to do one that included her tattoo on her hand. But I was completely starstruck when she said yes. I don't know what she's going to want done with her piece, but I'm just grateful that I got to work with her.
No wonder you were touching this so fondly when we got here as the artist who can touch their own canvases.
One of my
but
favorites.
Everyone else,
Don't touch
the art.
Alarms will sound.
Yes.
It's 3 of my favorites are in this exhibit, and that's one of them.
Portraits in Red will remain on display at Springfield Museums through September 7th, and beyond that, she has more resources to find out about this ongoing issue through her website. So we'll link to artist Nayana Lafan's page in our show notes.
Up next, a Ghanaian innovator explores his origins on his current tour, which makes a stop in Northampton tonight. We'll speak with Jedouble Amboli next.
You're listening to The Fabulous 413 on 88.5 NEPM.
The Fabulous 413 podcast is funded by the UMass 5 College Credit Union, dedicated to creating access to financial well-being for local people, businesses, and communities. Insured by NCUA, umass5.coop.
Hey!
Jedu Blay Ambule is a musical luminary hailing from Ghana, West Africa, with a staggering 29 albums under his belt. Known affectionately as the Simigwa Do Man, from mastering his father's flute at the tender age of 8 to owning his guitar skills under the mentorship of Uncle Bonku, Sammy Larty, and Ebo Taylor, Ambole's musical odyssey has been nothing short of extraordinary. His name has become synonymous with Simigwa music and dance.
Jedu Blay Ambole's groundbreaking debut solo album, released in 1975, remains a cornerstone of Ghanaian music history. Since that breakthrough in the early 70s, he's shared stages and studios with some of West Africa's greats, including Fela Kuti.
He has since continued to push boundaries, embrace, explore, create, and cultivate an impressive catalog of work. In recent times, he has become a go-to example of Ghana's rich traditional music form, so much so that he has performed tirelessly through Europe and the U.S., and most notably at Utrecht's Le Gascou Festival and the Montreal Jazz Festival.
And tonight, July 2nd, you'll have a chance to see him in a rare U.S. appearance at the Iron Horse in Northampton as Secret Planet's season closer, and even better, he will be performing that debut album in its entirety. We welcome the bona fide global sensation that is Jedu Blay Ambole. Thank you so much for joining us.
And thank you so much for inviting me.
Oh, no, our pleasure. It's not often that we get to talk to somebody who has invented two genres of music.
Let's talk about those genres of music.
Yeah. Can you talk about high life versus Simigwa versus hip life?
Right. When high life, it's a kind of music that originated from Ghana, West Africa. And to me, high life is the basis of all dance music coming throughout the world. Because in high life, we have two connotations in high life. One is ta 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 ta. That's the male, and the female is ta 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 ta. So we have two approaches, to the high life music that we have coming all the way from Ghana, West Africa. And growing up, our seniors had bands and all that, and they were recording and, portraying the kind of music that we have, to us. And where I came from, it's a port city. The port city, we have all the people, some of them are working on what we call it, the ships, traveling all the way outside the shores of Ghana and coming back with records and things like that. It was back in the 60s that I heard music coming from James Brown, music coming from Wilson Pickett, music coming from Stevie Wonders, and when it comes to the jazz side, I was hearing Jimmy Smith, I was hearing Miles Davis and John Coltrane, and all those kind of different approaches of musical styles, and that gave me a broad knowledge, of music that we have. But if I say high life is the mother of all dance music, I mean it, because that pop, 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 pop. If you go to South America where they play salsa music and everything, you feel that connotation into it. If you come to America, when they play funk music and everything, you still feel that into it. If you go to India, you hear Indian music, that is also into it. So it tells me that high life is the tree, and music coming from South America or India, they are all branches of that main tree that we call high life music. Hey,
oh yeah. Why do you call it high life? Where does the name itself come from, and why is it in English? Or is there another translation in another language?
In our language, we have a language called Akan language. And what I speak, we call it Fanti. And the Fanti, the name for the high life music, we call it Osibi. But the name high life derived from during the colonial days, those elites, the Africans who were elite and rubbing shoulders with the colonial masters and things like that. People standing outside, when they see that, they say that the Africans who are elite are leading a kind of higher life, by rubbing shoulders, because when they go to the dance floor and anything, they will be in suits, they will be in bow ties, they will be in ties and everything, just like the colonial master. And that time, those music like the ballroom dances, the quick steps and the boleros and all that, was being introduced that time. But that time, the elite Africans were, dancing to all these kind of formations of music. And people that couldn't, pay to go to the dance floors and things like that, they were saying that, the Africans are leading high life. So the word got stuck, and especially when the highlight music is played, of which is called OCB, it's a kind of music that brings all people together, because when they play that kind of music, nobody shows you how to dance it, but you can hit the dance floor and start doing your own thing, So the colonial masters didn't know how to do it, but they were dancing to it. And the Africans who were elite were also dancing to it. So the combination and everything, made that word high life to get stuck.
Music can make anybody live the high life, I guess. So I love it. It's a great equalizer.
I mean, that's true. But I've heard you speak a lot in the course of your catalog and your creation of music about trying to remove some of those colonial elements that were there in the beginning. Can you talk about why that's important to you in your process?
Because every country has its music. And to me, I feel that we need to do something for the world to know what we have, and we don't have to play it in the format of boleros or play that in the format of jazz, coming from America. But to me, music composition is just like you cooking soup. When you're cooking soup, the ingredients that are part of the soup is very important, because if the ingredients are good, anybody who is not an African even can have a good taste, and it is because of the good ingredients. So that was staying at the back of my mind, that anytime that I get together to compose music or to arrange music and everything, I try as much as possible to put it out there so that people can be able to identify, where the music is coming from.
We're speaking with Djedou Blé Ambole, who tonight, Wednesday, July 2nd, is playing the Iron Horse, bona fide musical legend, inventor of musical genres, played with the who's who of the funk and beyond world. And yet the name of your show, and I don't know if this is your doing or the Iron Horse is doing, is called Jazz is Dead. Have you called the show Jazz is Dead, or is that how they have named it? And if so, why?
Organization.
I think that name Jazz is Dead is coming from the company that has gotten together, because they thought of naming it Jazz is Dead. But to me, I know that jazz can never die. But if they have a name saying that jazz is dead, maybe they have a reason for that.
Yeah.
For me, I don't call it that way, but those that go together to put this tour and everything together has that name, Jazz is Dead. Well, I can't question it. And I haven't also asked them the reason why they chose that title for their programs.
Can you talk about your singing style a little bit? How rhythmic it is, how low it is, how close to hip hop it really is.
With all their parties, about their happiness, about their prejudice. About their happiness, about their prejudice.
the poetics of how you sing is also really fantastic. So can you talk about the way that you do your vocals?
Yeah, my vocals is directly coming from Ghana. When you come to Ghana, we have different tribes of people, and every tribe has its own approach to music. Because aside from the singing, if you come to the rhythm side of it, every tribe has its own. So anytime that we hear music, we can be able to identify where that music is coming from. So my style of singing is a combination of about 3 different tribes, that I've been able to immerse them and put them all together, So that has been able to give people my style of singing, because back home in Ghana, anytime that anybody hears my music, they say, "Oh, that is Jedu Ambele," because they can be able to identify, what my contribution has been able to make people to know and understand where it's coming from. So mine is a combination of 3 different tribal sounds, that I've been able to mix them to be able to arrive where I am now.
More coming up with Jedu Ambele as we hear about how traditional wordplay in Ghana is connected to the birth of hip-hop and what it means to play Simigwa, his debut album, after 50 years.
At which he will be doing tonight at the Iron Horse. You're listening to the Fabulous 413 on 88.5 NEPM.
The Fabulous 413 podcast is funded by Northeast Solar, homegrown in Hatfield, Massachusetts, and providing energy savings for their customers for over 10 years. Learn more at northeast-solar.com.
Let's go now.
We're speaking with Jedu Ambele, who tonight, Wednesday, July 2nd, is playing the Iron Horse.
This tour is, you're playing your very first album in its entirety. Can you talk a little bit about what it was like to make that very first album of yours?
Yeah, when I was growing up, the saturation of different styles of music, not only from my country, Ghana, but from other countries as well. Hearing them, and like I said, the seamen, they travel outside. When they come back, they come back with music. So my knowledge of music coming from America, knowledge of music that is coming from Europe and other parts of Africa, helped me to be able to put my albums together, because that album has 6 songs on that album. One is Simgwadu, one is Bolga Bishia, one is Tofi, one is Adwa, but all of them have different approaches, because when you listen to Tofi like that, it's like a blues, like an American blues, but with an African approach, instead of when you listen to it and hear that comparatively to music coming from America, you see that the basics are the same, but the approach is different, and Simugadu like that is the beginning of rap, so I always say that rap didn't come from America. Rap came from Africa, because Africa is the cradle of mankind. Africa is the roots, when I checked back, I saw that coming from America, and they were doing the rap. But we were doing it back home, even before 60s and the 70s and all that. We have somebody we call the linguist. the language always belongs to the tribal king. So when the king is coming, they give accolades to the king, So our form of rap coming from them doesn't have a rhythm, but it has fast way of talking. That sort of format. But I was the one who put the rhythm behind it. Like somebody Sumana about the two side, the Mansapantado, who are horse Mamuto, Konamandi, Muka, Hallelujah, Banchi, there's some Mamata, the man, the child, the Mamuto, Kota, say that they Sumana be. So that was our own form of interpretation, So I was the first to be able to record that style of music with the rhythms and everything attached to it. So the beginning was me. So I'm challenging the Guinness Book of Records. They need to rectify some things and let them know that instead of telling me that rap came from America by Rapper's Delight and Sugar Hill Gang, no, they have to do their homework very well and know where rap derived from.
So we mentioned that you were the creator of High Life music and Simigwa music, but we're gonna throw rap in there too.
Yep.
Jadu Bleambole, who's playing the Iron Horse tonight, and I think it is not without just cause. It seems very right that we should say so. You've been touring for a long time throughout the world. Has touring in the United States changed as of late, and how has it changed?
Comparatively to my tours in Europe, to America, there's total difference, as how people receive my music, traveling throughout Europe and all that. But I know that America is the entertainment center of the world. I know that. So coming to America, I said, no, man, I'm just going to see how Americans are going to receive my music. But like I said, music is just like cooking soup, man. You need to have good ingredients in the soup so that anybody who is not from your country and things like that will have a good taste when they taste the soup. So my experiments that I've made, I see that I'm ready for America because Americans are going to grab my style of music, and America, they are also going to feel themselves into my music because of the ingredients.
Get it on down.
Now you play saxophone, but you played like flute and bass and other instruments. How did you come to saxophone?
Saxophone, because I had a band back home, back in the late 70s. And my saxophone player left, because he had to travel out of my country, Ghana. So the saxophone was right there. I said, no, I need to pick it up because, saxophones and horns and things like that have been part of our music, because if you come to Ghana, we have trumpet, trombones, and saxophones and everything, all inclusive into the kind of high life that we play. So if it's not there, I think that I need to pick it up because I think it was also good for me, because I know other instruments, like I started with guitar playing and I moved to bass playing, keyboard, and all. I know all that, though I'm not professionally, a keyboard player and things like that. But if I want to compose my music and everything, I know how to, get my chords, and arrangements and everything. So I picked up the saxophone. That was, late 70s. And I said, no, man, I'm going to let it be part of me. I mean, basically, I wanted to use that as a solo instrument. After my singing and things like that, I can just pick it up and, add it to my singing and things like that. So that has been part of me for a while.
You're playing your first album in its entirety on this tour, but you've had this career that spanned almost like 5 decades. What is it like when you put your oldest music in the lineup with your newest music?
the style that I have, that is called a semigua. Semigua. Yeah, semigua in our dialect means that I'm sitting on my stool. I'm a king, of which, I'm sitting on my stool. That's the meaning of it. So all my compositions and all that have the basics of this semigua style of music, whether it's dance music or whether it's, listening music or anything, always has the basis of this style of rhythm and everything. So if you hear more of my music, you can always identify, something, of that semigua style, into that music, because, you need to have something that people can identify with. When they hear you, they must be able to say, no, this is Ambule, because identification is very important to me. So that has been the basis of my compositions, whichever music that you hear, because right now I have more than 29 albums, because some of them, my latest release was released last year, so all these throughout the years of the 70s up to now, collectively, the semigua style is always there. The Ambule way of singing is always there. Ambule's way of composing and arranging is always there for identification.
Well, you can hear Ambule's Way tonight, Wednesday, July 2nd, at the Iron Horse in Northampton. And despite the billing that jazz is dead, don't believe the hype. J. Dublé Ambule will be there tonight. And going to bring all sorts of the genres of music that he created to play in Northampton.
I mean, and frankly, if you go to this show and you don't dance, what's up?
Yeah, you got to live the high life.
Thank you.
Live the high life.
Thank you.
There are few musics that move me as easily as your music. So, go and get down. Everybody needs a little dance party every once in a while.
Yeah.
And to have it expand your global view of music, even better. Thank you so much for talking with us. This was amazing.
Yes, and thank you for saying that, because I always say people to, when they come in, they mustn't forget their dancing shoes, because my music will not allow you to sit. You're always gonna, even if you can get up, you'll be tapping your feet. So thank you for the invitation, and I'm looking forward for tonight.
I mean, it's so fun.
It's super danceable. It was a great excuse to drive around all of the valley all of this week.
I know.
Playing this funk and soul music.
It absolutely was, and it would be a really great opportunity to see him on stage in Northampton, but we've just learned that the show is sold out. That's no reason not to put yourself on the wait list, because you never know. People get sick, people don't show up, things happen all of the time. Absolutely worth it in case you want to go and see this legend, because who knows when he'll be back in the U.S.
Exactly. We did hear a little bit about some of the troubles he was having leaving the U.S. and then coming back to the U.S.
Yes,
But
getting out was fine. Getting back in was a question.
Yes, and we're very glad that we got to speak with J. Dublé Ambule.
Indeed.
I know our very own Karian Jiri was very jealous and blasting this conversation in the other room. But it's also worth mentioning that although this is the last show of Secret Planet's second season, this musical CSA, which we featured on the show before, begins its third season in late August, and it's already got the first few shows planned out.
Indeed. In fact, the opening show for the third season will happen on August 21st with Romperayo. I'm good at that. And then a second show's already planned out for September 5th with Tropa Magica. Both sound awesome. One is cumbia, and the other one is doing more fun, more progressive Latin stuff. Wicked, wicked cool. And find out more information about how to join their CSA through secretplanet.live. They always bring really cool shows.
And thanks to our friend Ito Moore for bringing all that stuff here and bringing all this great music from all over the place right into our backyard.
Oh, it's so awesome.
It's almost like the 413 is fabulous.
Oh, my
I know.
God.
And on the next
really?
Like, hey, look at all the cool stuff we have to do. On the next Fabulous 413, it's all about museums and all about histories of different eras.
And in Amherst, we'll check out the bones, fossils, and ongoing study at Benesky Museum's collection in Amherst College in preparation for the 8 days of Dino Trail Week.
I get so excited when I get to see dinosaur bones and fossils, and there's T-Rex and Triceratops and Podokesaurus holyokensis there.
Even plants.
Yeah, and even plants.
And something smaller that you wouldn't necessarily expect to see in a fossil.
Yes, and then we will go over the river from there and celebrate the opening of a new exhibit at historic Northampton that more closely examines the lives of enslaved people in that city, with the folks who spent 6 years making this exhibit happen in Northampton.
Yes, that exhibit is wicked, wicked cool. It's walkable. It's really explorable. Like, they did a lot of good work just looking at populations that have been ironically, historically overlooked for centuries.
Yeah, Northampton likes to pride itself on its abolitionist history, which it should, but there is another part of the history, too, which you'll hear about on the show tomorrow.
Indeed. Plus our weekly chat with Congressman Jim McGovern. If you've got a question for the Congressman, email us at thefab413@nepm.org, and we'll do our best to answer. Or Monty will, because I'll be asleep.
I talked to him early, but who knows what time they're going to vote on the big, beautiful bill.
Yeah, we'll
be
hold out as
standing
long
by
as we
with
can.
Congressman McGovern's schedule. I'm Monty Belmonte.
I am Khalees Smith. Good luck to all of us, and dance the night away. See you tomorrow.